Hi, Deb. Good afternoon.
Hi, hello. Thank you for joining.
No worries.
What's going on for you?
Um, yeah, so end of last year took some time off and then it's been busy kind of getting back in the groove of everything this year.
Mm.
But yeah, right now I'm just kind of focusing on I guess some new regulations and stuff coming out in the EU, so I've been trying to do some research and understand it better.
Is this the EED regulations?
Yeah,
Which,
it's for like what's it called? The EEC, so yeah, EED, sorry. Um,
yeah, yeah. Do you feel like you have all the information you need? I worked on that quite extensively with the Green Grid. Um, Up until the last minute, there was going to be a requirement to report compute utilization.
yeah,
Um, but that is not in the final version. We worked
yeah.
so much on that. It was a very interesting journey, actually. Um, but yeah, if you don't, so if you know that that's out, then you're definitely looking at the most recent um, version of all the documents.
Yeah, the latest drafts, and I think I do agree. Reading through it, there's a lot of security concerns, right? Because they're publishing things that can expose traffic volumes and security vulnerabilities. So it's like anything else. It's some good points people are making. So
Right. I the did you your company make a because they had a comment period, right? Very brief, ended in January. I guess that's this month. Did your company make a comment or
that's a good point. Let me double check. I've been
I
looking at
think it's too late now.
it's too late now.
Um,
Yeah, exactly. So I've been looking at a lot of comments, but I haven't seen one from IBM. But I have to
mm,
look through it again and see. I don't know if they actually did or not, truthfully. Wouldn't be me, it'd
yeah.
be somebody else in the EU. So
So through the green grid, I had the whatever experience of being in meetings with the commissioner that was in charge of writing all of that up. So it was very interesting to hear from his point of view. Um, yeah, but in a few short months, everybody's supposed to do their best effort at reporting for last year. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
yeah, it's hard to do some report on something that get thrown at you too. So
Well, we did show them data. Show, showing how seems most data center operators don't even know what they got in the building, never mind.
yes, that's very true.
All these other answering all these other questions. So, I mean, my interpretation was that the commissioner knows it's going to be a mess for
Yeah,
a
I think
couple of years.
this first year for sure is gonna be a mess. But
Yeah, even for a couple of years. But, again, my interpretation would be first step to start turning the screws, right? Um, you know, somehow making you know, improvements, right? In some incentivizing improvements through regulation. So um, yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. I don't know if you followed at all. I guess Germany had it's like there's the EU and then each member state in the EU implements the directives, right? Do you
oh,
understand?
didn't know that.
Um, yeah. that's another thing that's sort of interesting is that the actual, now say you have a data center in France, right? France has not yet published, okay, for our, if if you're on our land, here's exactly how, you go about this or whatever. Um, so the reason why I bring this up is Germany was leapfrogging ahead and putting some really, really tough asks. But I guess that not only did the overall EU kind of compromise hugely, but also Germany stepped back from the initial, some of the initial really harsh requirements. So I assume there was a lot of lobbying going on. Seems like the colo contingency was pretty strong
Mhm.
in which is quite possibly relevant for IBM. Um, was very strong in saying like, hey, we don't get to, even get line of sight to what, what our renters, tenants or whatever put in their, you know, floor space. It's, caged off from us. That's the business model, right?
Yep.
Um, so I guess that was a strong pushback, but yeah, it was a very interesting experience, I would say.
Yeah, and another before we jump into the regular agenda, to your point, right? So those in those colos, you're renting out space, they will republish a PUE for you, right? But how do you how do you use a PUE and understand how you've been affected by everyone else around you, right? So
Well,
it's
my
a
understanding is that if you're a tenant, you don't need to do anything for this directive. It's the owner of the physical
facility.
facility. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my understanding. Again, some number of conversations with the, commissioner that was right in the thick of it. But that was absolutely my takeaway. And that was, they got a lot of pushback by the owners of the
When you
colos. So
when you
yeah,
say that,
definitely look into that more deeply. See
yeah,
if I misunderstood or what have you.
we'll do real quick. When you say owners, does that mean like the real estate owners or the company that manages it?
Probably the management of they were the term that we would throw about is data center operators.
Okay, cool. Okay, I gotta look through the docs again and see how
Yeah,
what the taxonomy meant then.
yeah. So yeah, I would, because I mean, you could get a pass at least, now, if that's the right interpretation. I know for my company, the takeaway was where we have colos is fine, where we have relatively small data centers is fine, because they also have a threshold. Um,
Exactly.
and I can't remember where it landed. It moved through the process. Um, but we were therefore able to call exact for us. It was exactly one facility um, that is of interest to that they would be expecting us to report on. Um, so yeah, yeah. Let us know if you learn anything interesting.
Oh, I
Um,
will for sure.
it's not strictly um, the purview of this group, but we are, we did, I don't know if you were here, we did pick up operational carbon as well as embodied carbon.
Yeah, I think I was
Um,
here right when the talks were starting. So,
yeah. So I don't know that we would talk to this specifically, but it is a little bit more under our umbrella than it had been at some point. All right. Thank you for coming, everybody. Let me see
Hello.
the agenda.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. All right, I will share the agenda. Whoop, I need to sign in here. All right. All right, so I don't think anybody here was here today, was here last week. So I may cover again things we talked about last week just to make sure everybody's up to speed. So one thing is that the minutes, I'm still using the same file for the minutes. To me personally, I think it's would be more overhead than it's worth to publish weekly minutes on GitHub. So for now, I'm just sticking with the Google Docs. And I stayed in the same file. I just put 2024 at the top. And the document we used to add at the bottom. Now I'm just adding at the top so that anybody who misses and wants to look and see that it's just right up there at the top, less scrolling, at least for me. So, all right, so logistics. Next week's meeting is definitely canceled. I will be traveling for work, and probably the following week, unless anybody else winds up taking assignments today that they could report on then, because I will be, on a business trip all next week. So I definitely won't be making any progress between now and the 6th of February. All right, we can skip over the GitHub stuff. It's still here just to remind us, and the link to the white paper is here. So for opens, I had the iMason meeting. I was not able to attend. I was wondering if anybody here did attend and could give us a dump. And then, of course, any other opens that people have, feel free to jump in.
I can help you with the iMasons. I think you're talking about the iMasons and OCP partnership kickoff.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there a place, Shruti, where people can go to see minutes or
Yeah,
presentation?
they've not sent out the presentation deck yet.
Mhm.
Essentially, 2 presentation decks were used. So I think just one of them has not come, so it's not sent out yet. But essentially, we had a little bit of background. So the meeting had audience from both the sides,
Yeah.
meaning iMason members as well as OCP members. And within OCP sustainability as well as OCP DCF sustainability.
Yes.
So the initial part was basically to have a background of what iMasons and Climate Accord is and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And correspondingly also give a little background of OCP sustainability and DCF sustainability, which Alex did, so that the iMason members can have an idea of who are we partnering with. Then post that, we actually ran through the agenda. Agenda meaning what will be the work streams agenda. Let me quickly paste that link for you. Maybe you can bring it up while we're.
That would be great. All right, let's see what happens.
Does the link work for you? Yeah, okay.
Excellent.
So that's I should call it chart. That's the charter of what the work stream will be working on. So it is essentially looking to, looking to work in 2 phases. The first phase is more standardizing the disclosure format in which carbon information will be released. And the second one is more to do with how suppliers will get more involved, and how requests for information can be written for the suppliers and standardizing that RFI. One more thing in the phase one, also dealing with how this standardized disclosure information would be stored and shared. So that is also part of their endeavor in phase one. So I think, yeah, you can read through the document. It's a little bit, it's more than a page. You can read through the document, but that's basically the charter that they are targeting. And the workstream has 4 co-leads, so we did also introduce all the co-leads. One of them is Alex. I think you folks know him. He's also the project lead for us in sustainability. So one of them is Alex. Then Andrea, she has been very involved with iMasons. So Andrea is going to be another co-lead, more from iMason's side. And then from our side, there is Ryan from Google and Lalit from Microsoft. They are both going to be co-leads also.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
and the last thing that we discussed in the meeting, like after going through the backgrounds and then going through this charter of the workstream, the last thing we discussed was a little bit about the cadence. I think the cadence is not like completely finalized, but they were sort of looking at like a bi-weekly cadence or something, and generally maybe an 8 a.m. PST slot, just to make sure folks from all coasts and India, Europe zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the tentative cadence. They'll sort of finalize between the cadence options discussed and find that out, I think, with the presentation.
All right. Well, this sounds great. I think it will be interesting to, let's try to move along quickly here so that you're caught up with the current thinking of this group as far as what would be a request format, yeah, I think we can look at that and talk through that. My assumption would be that, if we ask the like the Dells of the world, right? We've looked at their LCA reports, etc. They don't really have the data. The biggest part of the equipment footprint came from the manufacturing of the silicon, right? And so they have to rely on consultants or try to squeeze that information out of the producers of the chips. And like a lot of chips are in a fabless situation, so they're then turning around and trying to squeeze that information out. So it's very hard to get good data. So what I'm kind of proposing is a way to share data, and people could over time improve on the data, and then perhaps that could be built upon and used for a carbon label. Because I think, again, if you just ask Dal, for example, or whatever, you're going to get the quality of what's currently out there, which is somewhat out of date, and never coming firsthand from a fab itself, right? So let's we'll get to this whole discussion as we move on. So another thing we could do is we could decide, no, iMasons plus OCP will have so much weight that we'll be able to push down through that whole supply chain and get answers from TSMC and get, that they're willing to publish, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, we'll have to see how it all pans out. So,
Yeah.
any
One
other
thing,
opens? Yes.
yeah, no, I was just going to mention one thing also that, Rob and Cliff, when we all had discussed this, that iMasons is sort of strong on that side, on the network side. So hopefully that the point that you're mentioning, that point also is, majorly helped by iMasons.
But do they have enough, just randomly picking, right? Enough weight with Samsung to get information from Samsung fabs,
Enough
right?
weight with?
Yeah, so that they can make requests to Samsung. Would Samsung even have heard of iMasons, for example? That would be a question. But we'll see, right?
Yeah, I
It
don't
could be
think
great. We could get off the hook of needing to do carbon modeling and everybody will share, right?
yeah, just to clarify, like Samsung or any other body does not need to sort of reveal their own particulars, right? They're not looking like in any of our these works, we are not, for the formation of the spec or something, we are not looking for particulars. If somebody is ready to share for example, that is fine. But otherwise, they don't need particulars of Samsung fab, you know, uh, provided kind of thing. I think that is something that any firm would, not want to share uh, currently. But they are not looking that you provide it to us. They are just looking to, you know, have that means so that they are able to provide it to their customers or their users, whoever they see fit under their contracts. Does that make sense? And I think that applies to us also, right? Like unless we are going after, the example part, we are not looking for anybody to provide us their particulars. Does that make sense, Deb?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to see, right? So they want a carbon label.
Yeah, I keep calling
Which
it
is,
disclosure, but essentially it's a carbon label.
not just an embodied, this is exactly what we've been saying, right? Not just a figure for the product, but information on how the number was calculated. And then we've been saying a confidence interval, but we've been tossing about the term grading. So it's very aligned with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
And
we'll have to see how this unfolds. I'm not, if they want to start with what we've learned, if they, want to build on what we've learned, that would be great. If they want to go back to square one, I'm fine with that as well.
yeah, I certainly think we should point them to our white paper as an input. Like
Well, so I do want
research
to
that is
rewrite the white paper. So let's try to get to the new format for the disclosure and the examples. Let's try to hurry through so we can get there. So if we can come to agreement on this, then I think I could pretty quickly redo the white paper, at least for the semiconductors to agree with the new format. So let's see. All right. So, and then really, really quickly, the 2024 plan. So I want to leave us time to look at the new format. So just so that everybody is up to speed, we have responsibilities for embodied carbon and for operational energy and carbon. And so this is what I presented to the larger OCP sustainability as what we would do for the white paper, try to get out a Rev 2 with a simpler methodology that we'll talk about today. I said, we're not going to do software implementation. We have no resources to do that. And there's really not like the plethora of backing data that one would want for software implementation. And then for operational, we already went through the background PowerPoint. And so in Q3, hopefully we'll have a white paper, and possibly in that time frame, we'll be able to publish some utilization and power curves and some other things that might be of help to the industry. So with that, unless anybody has any pressing opens, I wanted to spend a good amount of time on the new format.
Yeah, go ahead. I think my open is very much related to that only. I wanted to understand the first white paper is sort of waiting on what all items right now.
Right. So the white paper, the consistent feedback was we were asking for too much information, getting people to give both market and location based, breaking up the packaging from the wafer, the independent supply chains for packaging and wafer, that, nobody was really in any position to want to share at the level of depth that we were asking in that white paper. So after many, many attempts at what would a simpler request look like, this is kind of what I've come to as a simple but useful method of asking for information. So the concept would be that anything that is yellow is basically required for some answer, even if the answer is we don't know, or partial, or maybe, right? And then anything that's gray would be optional, backing information, etc. So there's this overview table, which is here, which is just some basic information, and then a detail table. So the detail, what we're asking for is something about how you calculated scope 1, something about scope 2, something about tier 1 supply chain, something about tier 2 supply chain, and then anything else that you would want to share in an optional. And so for the detail tables, there's a response, there's a request, is this information certified by a third party? And if so, who? And then what are your methods, assumptions, and sources? And then any other links or other information you would want to provide. The spreadsheet is focused around getting the most important is the carbon embodied in all the chiplets in the product. If you include the package, that's awesome. And we just ask, let's see, so where is this? We ask, what percent of the silicon chiplet area did you include in your embodied carbon estimate? And is your number for the complete product or only the silicon chiplets? So when we go through the example, you'll see I just did the silicon chiplets. I did not do the complete product.
So Deb,
yeah.
Comment on the table of details. Is there any, even to get to scope 1 and scope 2 method, do we need to separate that?
They are
right?
separated.
Because I know they are separated, but do you need that level of detail? Because ultimately what an OEM or another anyone who's interested is literally what is the carbon footprint per unit of area, right? Is
So
it scope 1,
that,
scope 2? That's what they need for any,
so we're not
embodied carbon
asking
estimate.
them to break it up by scopes, but we are asking them to share their methodology for each one.
Mhm.
And so, and in particular, scope 2, there's all the current touchiness around, is it market-based? Are you using unbundled racks, right? So I would like to have that separately called out for people to respond to.
I see.
Um,
I see.
and
Okay.
then I would also like a sense of how deep into the supply chain did you
Chain.
go?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're not asking, the original, we were asking them to break out the embodied carbon by these different things. Now we're not asking that, but we are asking for some information about the methodology, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's just go to the example that I did, which is,
So I had one thing while you were on
yeah,
the previous tab. So just comparing it with what we originally had in the white paper. So I think now we are going a lot more high level,
exactly.
right? Okay.
Exactly, because
So
we were told that you're never going to get the information the way we asked for it by multiple people.
right, because initially what we were asking, what we had in our white paper was a very detailed kind of report.
Yep.
Okay. So one thing is, with seeing this very high level thing, this is very similar to what they have been initially talking in the other work stream for a label, like for the carbon label. So would you want to just combine this work with that work stream and like basically work with them for this part?
Quite possibly, if they if they agree with this as a starting point, and quite possibly, I think a label would be even a higher level of abstraction in my mind. But this could be backing data for a label, but I think we need to sit down with the other parties and talk it through.
Yeah, I mean, their regular cadence work streams will start, so you can basically join there and give your input. Yeah,
Exactly.
from the first view, like I was seeing the white paper as very distinct from the label because it was like a detailed report kind of thing. But now it doesn't look very distinct if you are shortening and making it high level. So now it
Right.
seems like, it is the same, and I don't want redundant stuff. It will just not be too
Yep.
much time.
Yep. We can definitely talk to them and see what they think. But I think we can rewrite the white paper, taking out all of the tables that asked for so much detail, and instead talking about this level of detail, what's being asked for and why. So I think an example is super helpful. So I did do an example for, a lot of people I talk to are software people, and they're just trying to wrap their head around, you know, if I rent a, Graviton from AWS for 200 hours, right? How much embodied carbon am I responsible for, right? So AWS probably is not going to share that, but we can help them to build up a typical motherboard, and the typical embodied carbon within that motherboard, and they would have a number, and they would have some understanding of how that, if they care. A lot of people are like, just give me the number. But if they care about the methodologies, they would be able to understand that information as well. So starting point would be 32 gigabyte DDR4 RDIMM. So this is what I would say is, kind of the volume data center memory at this point. Originally, I thought we would do links, but instead I just cut and pasted the pictures in here so we can decide if that's what we want. But This here would be an RDIM that, you know, very typical RDIM, many manufacturers for this. Different if you look, there's one chip that's more rectangular. So there's 9 squares and one that's more rectangular. Oftentimes it would be another company that supplied the rectangular off of the square chips. And to your point, Divya, you know, to a software person, they don't understand the X and the Y and they don't understand a DIM architecture and the X and the Y and going to IMAX. So, you know, hopefully what I was hoping is that we could up level for them. You know, here's kind of, we've built up a, you know, CPU motherboard and with all these parts that would be very generic and typical, and, you know, and this would be the embodied carbon for that. So, you know, product type is a DRAM. On the other sheet we saw, right, we'd want to build this out for SSD, for NIC, for the NIC, for the, you know, unfortunately the BMC, the PCH, you know, all the, as well as the processor, and if you have a GPU accelerator, et cetera. So we kind of want to build this out for all of those pieces. So rather than a link, I gave the picture and I described it. Just, you know, described what it is, why there are 9 memory chips rather than 8, what, you know, what we call the non-memory chip, RCD. I probably should have said what RCD stands for. I don't even remember off the top of my head. So then I gave an embodied carbon number, and I said that, you know, one of the volume manufacturers published and reviewed a number for DDR4. And so I need to add a link, but, you know, so that's the basic methodology, is taking information from a volume manufacturer and then just multiplying it out to get to this final answer, and then adjusting to get to kilograms instead of grams. So I did not fill out an error bar. I said 90% of the silicon is included because at this point I didn't include the logic chip, but over time we probably could come up with a reasonable stand-in for that. This is not the package part, only the silicon chiplets, assuming it's fabbed in Asia Pacific. We're submitting it this year. We would say that it's valid for DDR4 if you bought it 5 years ago, or if you buy it 5 years into the future. This is just sort of volume DDR4. You know, estimate should cover it. And I'm saying that we're the owners of this. You know, hopefully over time we could get, you know, others with, maybe the people that created the dam or whatever to come in and do their report. It would have more information. It might be more clear. And that would be awesome. So then to what you said, Divya, you know, why did we ask for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, scope 3? So for scope 1, we just said the methodology was just based on manufacturer analysis, that it is third-party verified, and then the assumptions that would go into if you wanted to think about whether this is good. For scope 2, I said that it was location-based, and I based that because for the time frame that the SK Hynix and the Ketty did this work, SK Hynix had it was essentially market-based and location-based were practically the same for the company. So I said for all intents and purposes, this is a location-based number. And then for scope 3, I said that, yes, based on the third-party certifier says they claim to go all the way back to cradle. And then I added, because they did give water information, I did do the math on that and included that here. So this would be an example. So feedback, thoughts.
Okay, maybe I'll start. So, things I wasn't starting because my one feedback was more about the overall thing. I wanted to emphasize that, like, I don't think you need to throw away the original work also. Like, this is good, but I understand that work is very detailed, so it may not get, folks might not want to actually publish that much, but I think you've done a very good detailed reporting kind of thing. It may not be used for actually communicating with others, but one thing it does very good is, if I am one of the suppliers of the devices, it's very good for me to understand what I need to collect in order to know my entire embodied carbon properly. So it does very good on that. I just wanted to say that I don't think you need to throw away that first white paper. Like, we can position that as, this is a detailed reporting mechanism. It may not be a mechanism used between, customer and suppliers. And then this can be a later work kind of thing. That's how I was thinking when we showed both.
Okay. Anybody else? So let me just capture that. I can't remember which window.
Yeah, we just need to position it correctly.
As detailed reporting proposal, and then we would do a new white paper on the new proposal.
Yeah, and this new proposal part, I think that it would be good if that is what combined with the other work stream, or at least like
exactly.
a few chats if they feel like all this are fine.
Exactly. So I would want to document what I just showed you with words, not just a Excel spreadsheet, and then work with the new Workstream.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, as I have time, what I committed to, and I've already exceeded that, was to have DRAM in Q2. So I think we've got a good starting point for DRAM. In a few weeks when I have time, I can also do similar for SSD. I'm trying to think of what I can do for logic that won't be controversial for my company that I'm doing, but I could probably do some logic thing, right, by some other manufacturer. So there's no chance that I'm leaking important information from my company or something, So maybe again to do a graviton or somebody else's AMDs, maybe starting with a NIC and then going on to a CPU, because then we would have a lot of the pieces to put together on, you know, for a motherboard. So, all right, anybody else have anything else they want to say?
And look at the actual format a little bit offline also.
I'm sorry, can you say again?
No, I said the actual format that you were sharing right now. I'll look
Okay.
at it a little bit offline also because I'm getting pinged quite a bit on the side. So
Oh, okay. Yes, I will find a way to share. Um, I'll find a way to share the Excel. I don't know if I just will mail it or what. But I will find a way. All right. The last thing I did want to talk about is to recap the discussion from last week. So last week it was, I'm just trying to look and see who's here. Yeah. So Ari was here and then Francis came. So we had a very long discussion with Francis. She was very much questioning, is OCP the place to share embodied carbon? How can we leverage the strengths of OCP without getting somehow bogged down in ownership of and what would the word, like grading, you know, and having a database of information, right? She was very much against that. So she's kind of swimming in the opposite direction of where the iMasons initiative is going. So I did just want to make sure that everybody here heard that point of view from her. I don't know if there's anything we really want to take in action.
oh, I've not gotten. I guess he was not in the meeting, like the main OCP meeting. I've not heard that point of view of his.
So I typed into the minutes you know, so she was very much saying, you know, make it simpler to go from nothing to 10, right? So she, you know, she was whatever person number 1,000 to tell me that what the white paper asks for is too much. You know, where can we use OCP scalability and reproducibility? That's our strength. We don't want to be the false certainty. Source of truth should be the manufacturers. So, you know, I sort of turned that around and sort of said, you know, any researchers or any, you know, can fill out what I'm proposing and they can show what they know and don't know. And, you know, I don't think that there's any false certainty. I think it's all very transparent. You know, she doesn't want us to become a database manager. We want to be an influencer. Said how there are penalties for greenwashing, so we don't want to be putting ourselves open to those penalties. You know, her bottom line thing is what are OCP strengths and how do we leverage for our agenda? So I'm, you know, I'm just trying to reflect her thoughts back to you, Shruti,
Okay.
to do with
I'll
as
flip.
you will. But I've kind of shown you how I took her feedback and many other people's feedback, went to a much simpler and you know, simpler format, but you know, with transparency, what you know, what you don't know, what your baseline assumptions are. I think the, you know, question about being a, do we own the database? I think that's a valid question. I think for the short term, we certainly could store things on GitHub, publicly available, in a format that could be humanly accessed as well as machine accessed.
But
And then if it grows to be too much, we could come up with other options. Yeah.
but that goes to
That's
the heart of the question, right, Deb? I mean, no. For OCP and putting something on a publicly available GitHub of OCP, which silicon vendor is going to give you this data?
well, again, we're going to start out with publicly available information and true and complete transparency on how things were calculated. And then, hopefully somebody else will come and give, an even better report that, has fewer gaps in it, right?
I
Um,
see. So to
and
have,
so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
trying to start the conversation. And again, I think we can answer the question I hear from so many software people of like, just, I never even see these machines. I don't know what they look like.
right,
Just,
right.
give me a reasonable embodied
But that's a very
carbon.
different stakeholder. That's not the stakeholders that OCP works for. That's a different step.
Well, so iMasons.
OCP stakeholders are data center operators or data center vendors.
Yeah, so iMasons would be another customer within OCP that would be able to take this, all the work we've done so far to kind of go from all the questions one would want to know to actually a very succinct, short form of questions and answers. And so it would serve them as well, I think, as a very reasonable starting point. And also, because they probably don't understand silicon manufacturing either, right? So this would help them to further understand what they're going for when they want to give some kind of a label on embodied carbon for their equipment in the data center. So I think we can service both with the same, right? So, but let's capture that point as well. So the customers, so we're saying iMasons like want embodied carbon label starting point for IT equipment, and also software personas who want to understand, who want decent estimate of embodied carbon for their IT equipment.
When you're saying iMason like we want embodied carbon label starting point, you're talking about the workstream.
Yes,
Want us
or other, like if, some other organization, like for example, if Climate Neutral Data Center PAC wanted to include embodied carbon as one of their pact promises, right? Or, so why don't we say, data center facility operators slash organizations like for example, iMasons.
Okay, that's different in my mind. So what I'm trying to make sure we are not doing as OCP sustainability is publishing two different things, both of which look like carbon label. Right? That's what we don't want should happen, right? As OCP sustainability, if there are two different endeavors, we would want to work internally and then publish one thing for any data center facility operators, organizers, etc., etc.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. But I have like a 99% confidence that the iMasons folks don't understand enough to create this worksheet. They don't even know, they wouldn't know what to put here.
Yeah, I understand that part, and that's why both the people from Google and Microsoft who are involved, they are actually LCA and carbon assessment people. And that's why we sort of created the co-leads in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So they exactly know, running LCAs and scope 1, scope 2, all of this, tier 1, tier 2, they understand that part. So the hope is that, the two sets of understanding comes together there.
Yep, no, I definitely do not want to duplicate work, but I do think this would be a good starting point for them to look at and,
I agree.
get started with. And again, this is not an LCA, this is an input to an LCA.
Yeah.
Right? And we said that in the white paper. All right, very good. So I do kind of have to scoot. Any last words? All right, very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.